So I think we can start now. Welcome to the Antonio Cassis Summer School 2014. I'm really delighted to see all these people, interesting people from a variety of backgrounds. I would also very warmly like to welcome Professor Naomi Rotariasa, who has gladly, very kindly accepted to be here for 1 week. Professor Naomi Rotariasa is Distinguished Professor of Law at the University of California, Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco. She is the author of many interesting books, for instance, The Pinochet Effect, which I like very much. It's in my bookshelf. I look at it, I use it for class too. And I really think that the idea of an open conversation, critical thinking, is very much part of transitional justice. You know, transitional justice as a field, I think, started to emerge in the late 1980s, and it was actually thanks, I think, to an important group of thoughtful people, philosophers, lawyers, human rights activists, who started meeting regularly. There is the Aspen Conference and then so many others, and started thinking about transitional justice. So it was an open conversation, I think. I hope we will find the same spirit here during these weeks. Looking forward to that. And in that spirit, I would like everyone to present herself or himself in just two words to tell us who you are, in a phrase, and why you're actually interested in this, what you expect from this summer school. Can you perhaps start, Andrea? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Flavia Croet. I'm from Brazil. I currently work at the Federal Court of Justice. I don't directly work with transitional justice, but I do work in the criminal chamber in Brazil, and I have been researching international criminal law and the Brazilian amnesty law and the Brazilian Truth Commission as well for a few years now. And I am finishing my master's at University of Oxford, a master's on international human rights law. And I have just finished my dissertation on identity politics in Bosnia and in Rwanda after the genocide, and their compatibility with international human rights law, basically. So I am really interested in transitional justice, and I would just hope that we can all learn together. And yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Adrien Muraté, currently working for the International Rescue Committee as protection manager in Lebanon, and I've been working for a few years in the field of humanitarian affairs and protection of civilians in countries where transition has been really bad, and so dealing with the consequences of failed transition. So that's how I got very interested in this course, and I would like to learn a bit more about the bigger picture of transition. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kevin Gray. I'm a professor of philosophy and international law at the American University of Sharjah in the UAE, so I'm interested in the more theoretical aspects of the normative justification of the transitional justice project.
Good morning, everybody. I am Syed Waqas Shah. I'm from Pakistan. I'm a graduate of law, and I've done my master's in international relations. I'm working with United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in Pakistan, and I'm working as a national program manager for prosecutions. The reason I'm interested in this course is that I think in the coming days, the situation of Pakistan is going to be very critical, and we are going to need something, very important like transitional justice. And in 2015, we are going to plan a country program for the next 5 years, and we are very interested to, have this transitional justice component in there. So I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you very much.
Good morning, my name is Maria Paula Prada. I'm Colombian as well, so hi Javier, hi Julian. Nice to see you, and hi to you. People who is interested in Colombia, because, well, for us it's a really important moment in our life, and I guess we will go also for this peace agreement. So I'm Colombian, I'm working for the German Technical Cooperation back in Bogota in a peace program, and all I know has been learning by doing. We have been advising the new Colombian infrastructure created for the implementation of the victims' reparation law. It's a great challenge, and as some of you might know, we are going through transitional justice in the middle of the conflict. So it seems to be it's new in the international community, so I'm here just to know about it, to get more information, and I hope to be wiser once I'm back home. Thank you.
What I'm going to do every day this week is I'm going to start us off with the why. Why do we care about this? What is the point? And then move a little bit to the how and when and what. But I think it's important to start with the why. Why do we care about these things? What is it we're trying to do? What is transitional justice? What is transition? Why transition? Why is that the right set of categories, right? What are the other things that you could use to organize your thinking about what we're doing here, and how do they connect up? I mean, you have a transition, you're going on, things are presumably different than they were. Why do we need to look back? Why do we need to think about transitional justice in the sort of broadest sense? Has to do with we need to think about what happened in the past and do something to deal with it in order to move on. Yeah? So, why? Yes?
I think our colleague from Canada kind of illustrated why. Because if you don't deal with it, it keeps on simmering and lingering, and it's a new seed for problems. Right.
All right, give me a few more. What else? Why else? Yeah.
I think we're also not only under moral but also legal obligation to provide reparation and justice to those who have suffered violations of international human rights.
So there's a legal component to this. So there's some notion that society has been pulled apart and that somehow those pieces have to live together, right? And there has to be a way to do that. Sometimes talked about as reconciliation, sometimes as social reconstruction. There are various terms that we could use. One of the things that happens in periods of human rights violations or conflict is that people lose their trust in the state to protect them, to actually look out for their rights, to provide basic services, right? Yeah? And so there is a way in which what we're trying to do here is to reconstruct that trust in state institutions. All right, I mean, you all know the old saw about, you kill one person, you go to jail, you kill two people, you go to a mental institution, you kill 10,000 people, you go to a peace conference, right? That's the problem, yeah? That's what we're worried about. Yeah? This idea of transitional justice as a field starts out from a place where what we're talking about are clear transitions from repression to what? Non-repression, right? Notice the to what is a bit problematic. To democracy, to elections, to less repression, right? Yeah? Never clear. Never clear in that definition what we're transitioning to, yeah? But clear that we're transitioning from, yeah? Repressive regimes. Okay. There's something about having a sense of justice, right? A sense that things have at least attempted to be put right? And notice I say attempt, because one of the things that I think is a problem in this area is the idea that you can put things right. I don't actually think you can put things right. I think you can make it better. Right? I think you can improve a bad situation, but I think that we fool ourselves if we think that we can take profound social processes of conflict and make them better, right? As though they had never happened. That doesn't happen. Right? It's not just about retributive justice in the sense of, wrongdoers have got to be, put in jail. There's also this restorative justice idea. There's this idea that, you have to put the society back together somehow. That really, if we're talking about justice after periods of repression, periods of conflict, we have to look not just at putting bad guys in jail, not even just at reparations, truth-telling, thinking about how reconciliation measures, how do we put the society back together, but we have to think about root causes. We have to think about, why is it that the society fell apart in the first place, right? And that will require us to look not just at these first two, but also at the distribution of resources and power in the society, right? And that if you don't start thinking about how those things need to be changed, you're never going to really get at the underlying causes, right? Yes?
I would like to ask about this also culturally bound
Yes.
approach, but also connecting with what you said a bit earlier, which is what the courts do and what, as I hear the transitional justice process want to do, is to individualize guilt. And as I'm working at the ICTY, the job that we do is we individualize guilt. And I do believe this is the right approach. However, I also see the limitations and the kind of dissatisfaction of the communities with this approach. Of course, it is absolutely right and certain that if you do something, you should be put on trial if it's possible and be accountable for it. And however, I also feel that if we are talking especially about high-level accused, they do not only represent themselves, but very often what they do is a question of state policy and a question of organized violence.
Yes.
So I suppose this insistence, which is very much maybe Western type of insistence of individual guilt, because we do not want to stigmatize whole communities, and I believe in it. But I have a problem in this tension here.
Moving from repressive regime, for example, the challenge is a great part of the crimes are really like not like stealing money in a physical, meaning kind of thing. But there are lots of political crimes, lots of atrocities, lots of that the responsibility of it actually is far away distributed among the regime itself. So if you leave it to court as well, and this is the other side, so the court would not have something really tangible. So now to give you an example, we had a dictator, Mubarak, and we stepped him down, and now he's allowed to get out of jail because the existing court is, number one, corrupt. Number two is he is being after getting land or villa somewhere that worth this amount of money, but his political crime, his human rights crimes are not there.
What I found is interesting looking at this is that each of these elements is talking about dealing with the past, and I'm wondering about the role of transitional justice in many of the situations where it's not all in the past. There's not a definitive breaking point where now we're done with this and now we move forward, but rather a lot of places are using or looking at using justice as a means to transition rather than justice something that you do after you have transitioned.
Yes, transitional justice is about dealing with the past, but why do we deal with the past? We deal with the past because we care about the future, right? And because we think that if we don't deal with the past, the future will just be more of the same, and we're trying to create a break there, right? Now, there's a more difficult question that I heard, which is, can you use these things in cases of ongoing conflict, right? And frankly, I'm not sure. I haven't seen very good results when there isn't at least clear political will.
The situation, I think, reflecting back in Kenya, is that we got the model, used the justice, the TJR, and it failed because we couldn't agree on who the chair is because we're not yet fully in transition. So in terms of a broader approach, we are trying with the constitutional reform and reforming how we share resources, and I feel that would be a better approach because when we say, we went through a period of 2 years of a TJR, and all we have is a book that has not even been popularly received amongst communities. Communities came out, the scope of the TJR was too wide. It started from independence and there was a lot of historical injustice. So we mobilized communities and they came, but they're still waiting for the reparations. And right now, the issues that we have at the International Court are actually clouding. We don't have anyone who can take forward what the recommendations of the TJR. So for me, just listening to you, I think just a reflection that sometimes transition might not be what we think it is on the ground because there's no cutoff. it's been a period of historical injustices, and right now, political will is not. We can't even think about communities right now. We think our political elite is thinking about survival for themselves. So I think the broader institutional and the timing also would be important, because we just picked the model. I think as we're negotiating, they just said, why don't we try a TJ, a truth commission, and we mobilized. But it's just, I wouldn't say it's a flaw, but I think that's a feeling that is there, that it really did not work for our country.
How do we ensure ownership of these processes? Everybody talks about ownership. Ownership is one of those wonderful words that you see all over these documents. But what exactly does it mean, and how exactly do you do that? Right? And how do you do it? Because I'll tell you a couple things about ownership and agency that, it takes a long time. Right? It's messy. Who represents communities? Right? What if there's more than one perspective in a community? Who talks for the community? Right? And if you are worried about who talks for the community, it's going to take even longer, right, to get things done. And meanwhile, you've got funding cycles that are going to run out in 6 months. Oops, right? Yeah? So everybody likes to talk about agency and participation and ownership, but if you haven't noticed it yet, I'm here to tell you, it's not easy. Right? It's really complicated to do this, yeah? And yet we need to figure out a way to make it happen. So how do people take control of this agenda and make it theirs? There's been an issue as to, do we deal the same way with non-state actors as we deal with state actors? Or is there something specific about state actors who have legal responsibilities to protect and ensure rights? That means that we would treat them differently under some circumstances than we would treat non-state actors. Now, yeah, before you can think about trials, you have to think about evidence, right? And so they sort of explicitly talk about how are you going to get evidence. But then also down here, psychosocial interventions. So if you're going to have trials and truth commissions, you have to think about what is the effect going to be on the people who are participating, and what is the effect going to be even on people who aren't participating, right? Many of whom have suffered quite significant trauma. Conflicts are very different from place to place, right? And especially when you have big, complicated countries, right? It doesn't look at all the same, yeah, when you're in one place than when you're somewhere else. I want you to think about, in the particular context of the country that you're representing, what would you do, right? And we'll come back and we'll hear from you, I hope, by the end. Assume for now that all of these governments are in transition. So let me tell you what this means. So in Zimbabwe, Mugabe had a heart attack. So not that yet. Well, there you go. Right? But just assume that. Yeah. Right. And the question is, now what? And I want you to spend the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Where'd Frank go? Well, I'm going to make an executive decision. 15 minutes. And I want you just to think about and to write down as a group, what do you want to know before you can start thinking about what kinds of mechanisms might be appropriate? So what do you want to know about the country? What do you want to know about the history? What do you want to know about the law? What do you want to know about the politics? Right? As concretely as you possibly can, what do you want to know? And then, if you can do more than that, where are you going to find it? How are you going to figure this out? Right? So right now, all I want you to think about is what information you want.